paragraph 48, some doubters wondered if the League of Nations would have the power to implement its decisions. So again, one sentence summary. The treaty at home says despite Wilson's resounding faith in the creation of the League of Nations and other agreements that came out of the Paris Conference, Americans had numerous questions about the decisions made there. Though there were many, particularly Democrats, who unhesitantly advocated American membership in the League, among them teachers, members of the clergy, and others who favored a rapid restoration of peace, others had their doubts. Remember, Wilson is a Democrat, so he had the support of most of his political party. But the Republicans had control of both the Senate and the House at this time. It goes on and says, some doubters wondered if the League of Nations would have the power to implement its decisions and to put a stop to aggressors. So they were really questioning what power the League was going to have. Said others felt the League of Nations covenant was too liberal and too internationalist. They argued that it would compromise the sovereignty of the United States and entangle U.S. soldiers in conflicts of faraway places. So again, as we looked at that picture of the bulldog that had the muzzle on it, which was entitled the League of Nations, that kind of symbolizes the fear of Americans, which was the fact that we would not have the power and the say-so to react how we wanted to in situations that we would have to follow the League. And that was a concern of many. Okay, for our next section, how did some American ethnic groups react to the treaty? We're looking at paragraph 49. Some American ethnic groups still felt a strong attachment to their homelands. And paragraph 50, Irish Americans were not the only ethnic group upset with the decisions made in Paris. And again, it's a 25-word summary answering the question, how did some American ethnic groups react to the treaty? It tells us some American ethnic groups still felt a strong attachment to their homelands and were incensed by what they considered Wilson's betrayal. Irish Americans, for example, were upset that their homeland was not freed from English occupation. Wilson felt that the Irish lived in a democratic country where democratic means were at their disposal for solving their own problems. He viewed the problem there as one for the British and not a problem of international consequence. Irish Americans were not the only ethnic group upset about the decisions made in Paris. Italian Americans were indignant about Wilson had refused to allow Italy to take an important port from the Yugoslav territory. So they didn't necessarily agree with the borders that had been realigned. German Americans complained of the treatment of Germany under the terms of the treaty. So everybody, even though were living in America and had chose to come there for the most part, they still had close ties to their homelands, whether it was family that was still there or the lives that they had before, and they were still looking out for the interest of their people and their culture. The last section, how is the treaty received in Congress, is only going to involve the paragraph 51, the last one, which says, though the outcome of the Paris Peace Conference was a topic of great discussion. And again, this is a 25-word summary. It's going to respond to the question of how was the treaty received in Congress. It goes on and it tells us, though the outcome of the Paris Peace Conference was a topic of great discussion and disagreement throughout the United States, nowhere was it as hotly debated as it was in the Senate. When Wilson set sail back to America after signing the Versailles Treaty, he did not realize that the struggles he experienced with the Big Four would pale in comparison to the fight he was about to have with members of the United States Senate. Storm clouds had been gathering for months over what the treaty meant for Americans' foreign policy.